Jelaila Starr began communicating with humanoid lion being called Devon in 1993. He belongs to a feline race that first established a presence in the Lyra constellation. She was told that the felines were responsible for seeding the first humans in the Lyra and Vega systems and later established a presence in the Sirian star system after a catastrophic war. She asserts that the reptilians are important mirrors for Earth humanity as we are collectively involved in historical conflicts that stretch back millennia.
You're listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla, your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
Well, welcome back to the show, Jelaila.
Hey, good to be here.
Yeah, well, that was just a very brief description of some of the history of the galaxy that you've explained in our first two interviews. So for people who are new, is there anything you want to add to that?
As far as the history or?
As far as who you're in communication with?
Okay. Yeah, because, as I have been doing this, I learned more about them. When they first contacted me, they didn't even tell me who they were. It was an interesting thing. I mean, I had that dream where this being came to me in the dream, and it was very real. It kind of frightened me. So I went to a friend of mine, and I said, "You wouldn't believe what happened last night." And she said, "Well, I met this person who's a psychic and you should call him." Well, I didn't do psychics. I was a businesswoman with a small kid and single mom. So I'm like, I don't know about that. But anyway, I was pretty freaked out. So I went, and he had contacted her friend the night before and gave his name to her and said, "Remember my name." So she calls this psychic before I ever show up, never met this woman at all, and said, "This being came to me last night and told me his name." I was freaked out by it. She goes, "Oh, that's pretty cool." And then I walk in, that afternoon, and she said, "Well, what name did you get?" And I told her, and she goes, he came to my friend last night and gave that name. So she looked at me and she said, "This is a very powerful spiritual master." That's the way he presented himself. And she said, as I was walking out the door, if you listen to what he has to say, you will become more than you ever thought possible. And I'm thinking, okay, well, there's my first confirmation that this was real. And so, it continued on from there. But the first 3.5 years was just doing emotional clearing and learning about patterns and behaviors and the psychology of the human. And I see now, looking back, why that was so important, because we make choices out of our belief systems. And if we don't know our patterns of choice making based on our beliefs, then we're doomed to repeat the same issue over and over and over again. So that's why my initial training was all about, human psychology. And then he began to explain who he was 3.5 years later. And I explained that in my books, how that came about. So it wasn't just, it would have freaked me out back then. There would have been no way I would have continued this if he had just come out and said, "Hey, I'm from another time and we're your ancestors, and there's things that are going to happen in the future that are going to, if they don't go the right way, you'll end up losing your planet." Yeah, I would have not bought for that. I would have not gone for that. I'd have actually gone and checked myself into some, hospital to see what had happened to me. But, they came along, they brought me along very skillfully. And so, I was stepping up in consciousness. That was the whole idea, but it was all through experience. They couldn't tell me something. I had to experience it. And then in hindsight, I would understand it. So these beings They call themselves in the beginning the Nibiruan Council. And the reason they did that, which I now see later, is not because they were Nibiruan now. They are ancient ancestors of the human species, and other species, because there's other members of the council there are ancient elders of different species that are working together. And so they are amongst that group. There are historians amongst that group. There are an amazing, scientists. They each have their level or area of expertise, but they all work together, all these different species, and they have learned how to live in harmony with diversity. They have amazing capabilities, like the ones who are, you would say, the warrior group. They don't use traditional weapons. What they will do is they just lock you into a time lock. In other words, into a dimensional lock. It's a prison. You can't get out. So they don't use like firepower. They use frequencies as one of their major abilities, using the scalar wave. That's just one of the examples. So the historians, which are basically the felines, they work a lot with crystals, which is why when I first started the mission part of my work, after I'd gone through all that training, then they went into the history. And then the first thing they did when I was getting ready to launch my mission at the end of like late fall of 1996, I was guided to go down to a crystal mine in Arkansas, which is supposed to have these young crystals. And I came back with a ton of crystals, including 2 15-pound generators. And I was guided to set up crystal grids. It's the craziest thing in the world. But now I understand that history, knowledge in consciousness can be put into crystals. You can keep records in crystals. So the crystal grids actually had 2 or 3 different purposes. So they work a lot with crystals. They hold a lot of they keep a lot of records in crystals. And they also work obviously with cats, because cats are the transmitters between me and them. So I ended up with 5 cats. 5. Crazy.
Can you maybe just explain the difference between the Nibiruan Council and the Nibiru that Zecharia Sitchin talked about, that he believed was this rogue planet, and others have talked about it, Nibiru being a mothership. So is there any relationship between the Nibiruan Council and this Nibiru and the Anunnaki?
Yes. Okay, so I was kind of going there and I got off on a tangent. Sorry about that. So the elders, Devin and this 9D group, okay, they are the ancient ancestors of the current day Nibiruans, which from their perspective are our parent race. They created us. So that is the current 5D, some are 6D Nibiruans today. That is that planet. But that planet, and here's the thing, that is not just a planet, Michael. That is a solar system. There is a brown dwarf, I guess you could call it. It's a sun that never ignited. And it came from the Sirius system, and it was blown out of the Sirius system during the Sirius B catastrophe with the Sirius B sun. And it was rogue for a long time until it got caught in the Pleiades. And at that point, it began to, I don't know whether it had already started pulling in planets and asteroids into a solar system of its own, because even if it doesn't ignite, it still has a strong magnetic core. So it is a solar system with a bunch of planets and asteroids and, debris in its orbit. So Nibiru, so there's a planet in that Nibiru system that is the homeworld of the ones we call the Anunnaki, or the ancient Sumerian gods. So Anunnaki is just a term meaning the people who came down in spaceships or in rockets. So it's the same group, and they're still alive because, they live millions of years. Well, they got here, 450 roughly 1,000 years ago. So if you live 1,000,000 years, how old are they now? A couple of years older. So they're still around. Does that answer your question?
Sure. Well, there's people that talk about the Nibiru mothership, and that apparently it's supposedly parked out by Jupiter or Saturn, and is playing a role now with humanity's kind of graduation, or humanity freeing itself of reptilian control. So, what do you kind of like say to that, about this idea of a Nibiru mothership, and that Enki or Ea is basically the head Anunnaki at the moment?
Okay, so there are numerous motherships. This is the thing, that one of the things that they told me in the very beginning, when we actually got into the actual training for my mission, was that it's not just one way. There's multiple interpretations of things. So, for example, the word Nibiru, or the idea that Nibiru is just one planet. They kept telling me in the beginning it was a planet, it was a ship, and it was a battle star. Well, of course, we think the way we think, right? And we think, oh, well, this is just one planet that's all these things. No, it is multiple motherships, multiple hollowed out asteroids, multiple of all these things in that solar system. So what is parked out by Jupiter, I don't know if it's by Jupiter or Saturn. I know that in the Saturn rings, there are laboratories that the felines use. They were the ones who gave us the DNA recoding process to reconnect to the other 10 strands, basically giving us the key to unlock it. But they have ships all over the place. It's not just one ship. If people can expand their minds to think about this as being a solar system, there are multiple inhabited planets. One of those planets had the parent race that came here and created us, and you have multiple motherships. You also have some of their comets that come through here, like Comet Elenin and others, are part of their far-flung solar system, because their ring nodes go out a lot further than the ring nodes of the planets in our solar system. It's very far-flung. So it could very well be a mothership that's over there. Now, is Enki on that ship? I don't know. I never asked, because I don't work with the ideas that much anymore. I mean, I had interaction with Anu when I was writing the first book and during my initial training. And he gave me some history, all right? And it explained the whole Enki Enlil drama from their perspective, which is different than what you're getting from other places. They explain things from the position of the parent race rather than the child race trying to figure out what the parents did.
I see. Well, I mean, you've talked about this in your books, and that goes back to the, I guess, 1990s. You did your first book. So nearly 30 years now you've been talking about this and putting out information. So definitely we're keeping all that in mind. So I wanted to now kind of shift to a discussion that we had by telephone, and you talked about a first contact event, and in our last interview you talked about first contact, how sometimes it can be rushed and that can lead to disaster, civil war and so forth, or in some other cases first contact has been delayed until you also had civil war. So there's a need to kind of get it right, not to rush it and not to be too slow. So that was what we discussed in our last interview. And then you told me about this 1990s vision you had of a first contact event where essentially humanity was being duped by some kind of like advanced healing technologies like Medbed. So you want to kind of share that vision and what you were told about it and how that is important today?
Yes. Back in 2006, no, back before that, like in the early 2000s, I have to go back to my own books to remember all this history. But let me preface that with explaining why I got this information. So when I was going through my pre-launch training, that's when they began to give me the history, and I would see scenes. I would wake up at like 1 o'clock in the morning, and I would go sit in a chair, and they would have me look at an emotional. It's like an emotional ping. And I would just focus on that and then see what opened up. And these visions would start to open up. Now I learned that, all of our memories are held like in file folders, and that's why when you hear a song or that, it just brings back a memory, it's like it opens up the folder and brings it back. So the way to get back to the records is always through the emotions. But one of the events that they showed me, but I didn't understand what it was at the time, was these ships that would come down, and these people would come out, and they'd look almost angelic. They'd be blonde hair, blue eyed, they would be humanoid, nothing that would freak us out. And they would offer healing, but they would offer healing at a time when the planet was in great distress and the people were extremely, extremely sick. And they would be so desperate for the healing, they would line up, and I just saw big long lines of people waiting to get into this ship. And they bring them in and they put them in these, what I called at those times, a stasis chamber. And you would lay down in it, and it would close over the top of you. But the issue was that this group wasn't really here for the benefit of humanity. They were here to assist another group that was trying to take over the planet. And those two were they were working together. And so the people would throw caution to the wind. They would not question this opportunity to heal. They would just line up and do it. And anybody who was opposed to it would be silenced, because the people would just like want to beat them up and shut them up because they were so desperate for this healing. But what that was, it was a way to, and I don't want to go too far with this, okay? Because I don't want to put my speculation in there, okay? But that what they said was that finished off that species. They became assimilated at that point. And partly they were AI at that. They had lost their ability to be a full human. So they had lost their DNA blueprint, so to speak. They couldn't get back to it, because once you go the mechanical route, even a small amount of you, that part cannot come back, cannot be returned to a human level.
Okay.
And so they should be aware of it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so that's very important, because people have been talking about a first contact event that would be staged, involving these kind of like angelic, human-looking, Nordic-type extraterrestrials arriving and kind of like being given the nod of approval by a lot of major institutions like the Vatican, but it would all be a deception to trick us into something.
Yes.
So this kind of brings me to a interview I did with an article, and then a subsequent interview I did with a Dr. Andrea Martin, who talked about the leadership of the Galactic Federation of Worlds had struck a bargain with the kind of like existing power structures on our planet that delayed official disclosure. And you thought that actually wasn't such a bad thing, because it would give us time to kind of like evolve and get ready. So you want to maybe explain why you think the delay of an official kind of like UFO or ET disclosure actually can be a good thing?
Yes, from the ancient elders, the 90 Nibiruans perspective, this is exactly what needed to happen. You don't want to go too far this way, you don't want to go too far that way. This was right in the middle. And the reason they felt that way is because even if you have conquered the species that is trying to take over the planet, you now have to free the minds of the people, because the way that they did it was through programming the mind. Back in 2004, they told me it would be a war for our minds. And that is documented on my videos on my website. So they have done heavy programming of us and put us in this matrix, if you will. It's a mind prison. So you can free us physically, but now we have to free ourselves mentally. And that is what we still need time to do, because look at your neighbors. How many of your neighbors are awake? How many of them care what's going on? How many of them know that there are ETs out there? Many of them do not. If you were to try and do this big disclosure right now, keep in mind, planet is traumatized right now. Isn't that, this is a bold statement, but what do you do in MK Ultra? You program them when they're traumatized.
Right. Yes.
So the ones who want to enslave us, this is their last trick. Well, there's one more, but this is the second to the last trick. And one of the biggest ones that we started working on back in 2004, creating a different way of resolving this issue than what we had done in the past. We just put like programs or templates into the grid, mass consciousness grid, like the 100th monkey syndrome. We put a template in there for how to wash the potato a different way. So the fact that we're doing a slow disclosure, now that we've freed the planet, we've got to give the people time to come out of the programming. And that is going to take some effort and some time. It doesn't mean it's going to be 10 years. It could be. It depends all on us, how fast we come out of this. But there's going to be a tremendous amount of support for it to happen. And at the same time, there are going to be technologies released that do not require nanotechnology, which is part of the Medbeds. It would have been part of the Medbeds that this group would have used to turn you into, because anytime you use nanotechnology, that's AI. There are other technologies, other healing modalities that use scalar wave, the longitudinal waves of space. It uses scalar wave to heal. This is what we had in Atlantis. We had the ability to use color and sound to heal. These technologies are already starting to get out there. The Rife machine. There's a new one I just heard about from a guy that can kill any kind of, parasite. There are all kinds of other things besides nanotechnology that the human can use to heal and maintain a pure human DNA blueprint, so we don't lose our identity. Because remember, from their perspective, we are the golden children. We are this amazing species that has all 144,000 DNA codes for all these different species inside of us. So we are the living library. You don't want to damage that library, and you don't want to get it assimilate into an AI. You want to keep it pure as you can possibly keep it. And that's what they're talking about. If you can help and support people in waking up and do this, baby step them into this now, then you will bring the majority of the planet with you through this whole ascension process. Because if we just keep If we just free ourselves, if they free us, we didn't do it. If the military and the white hats and whatever free us from these other species that are trying to take us over, but we don't free our minds, what's going to happen 2 generations from now?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, a very important point. And I think when we're looking at freeing our minds, health is probably one of the highest kind of like issues that we all hold. And as I think you've pointed out, or at least in our conversation, you pointed out that we're kind of slaves to the medical industry, that vast majority of people will just slavishly do whatever it is a doctor tells them to do. And we need to free ourselves of that, because when these med beds do come out, we need to be cognizant of, well, what is it that they're going to change? Is it a good idea? I mean, maybe we rely on self-healing as opposed to getting into a medbed that uses technology that could change us in the way that you've described for this deceptive first contact.
Yes. And so because this group made a deal with the powers that be, when I get the information, they keep telling me that these timeline events that, we've worked on over the years, it doesn't mean we're going to stop them. It means that we can alter the outcome. So from our perspective, what you explained in your article, I guess it was, that they have come to this compromise. That compromise is that replay, but altering it in a way that gives humanity the chance to grow up, so to speak, and take back their power to control their own minds and heal their own bodies, because everything we need to heal is on this planet.
And within ourselves too. I mean, clearly that point of infinity within us, that heart center, incredible healing potential right there. If you can connect with it, it's a very difficult thing to do, but you can do it. I know that.
And just imagine that when people start to learn that they can heal themselves, they're going to jump on the bandwagon, and it's the 100th monkey. The more people start to do it and see results, the more other people want to jump on it. Because imagine not having to take any medications, not having any of the side effects. You're free. You're free to control your own destiny, and they begin to understand that what you feel, what you think creates an emotional response, and what you feel alters your body physically. It's like I had a friend just recently who ended up in the hospital with a heart attack, and we now connect it back to he lost his dog of 15 years and he was heartbroken. So what you feel affects you physically. So if you're feeling it, then let's deal with that rather than going and getting some kind of drug. So we're taking back the ability to heal ourselves from the people we gave the power away from to. We gave it to them. So that's what needs to happen before you do a big full disclosure. Otherwise, people just drop on their knees. They'll either worship these people, or they'll run to them for help. But most of them will not do what we need to do, which is step back and go, wait a minute. Is there a hidden agenda here? What's in it for them? There is not a single one out there, as far as we're concerned, that is doing this for a totally philanthropic reason. There's always a give and a take in the universe, cause and effect, giving and receiving. They're going to get something out of it. We're going to get something out of it. As long as that's clear and up front, we're good. Then we can make informed decisions.
Well, I've heard that med beds have been mass produced on the moon by major corporations, and they're just waiting for the go-ahead to release those. So I guess with when that kind of technology is released, I know there's a lot of people within the kind of UFO exopolitics communities that are just really looking forward to the release of medbeds. But I remember hearing a very popular secret space program insider say that who was suffering from certain illness, that he said that the extraterrestrials that he was involved with said that the illnesses that he had, he should not use a medbed. He should heal himself. And that kind of like is the dilemma all of us who are aware of these med beds and they're being real and eventually going to be released is like, do we get into one of those things? Even if it's built by our military rather than by an ET group, do we just get into it and like undergo the changes, or do we trust ourselves and heal ourselves? I mean, that's the dilemma, and everyone watching this that does want to get into a med bed to heal. I mean, isn't that an important choice that they have?
It is, and like what we've said all along is that even if you got into a med bed to heal something, if your way of thinking keeps creating a negative emotional response in your body, you're going to just create a different kind of issue, because you haven't, it's our bodies are a reflection of our consciousness. So if there's trauma in that consciousness that we have not resolved, that ends up affecting our physical body. So if we don't go back and deal with the emotional clearing, remember, I did 3.5 years of it before I could even start my mission and, get up to speed. And I look at it now, man, I would not have been ready to do the work I had to do. If we can deal with our emotional stuff, we can heal a lot of what's going on, and we don't need a med bed for that. It's like when you take somebody who is an addict and you do a rescue on them, you do an intervention. If they're not ready to get clean, if they're not ready to change their life and resolve whatever's inside of them, the pain that they are trying to medicate, they're just going to go back out and use again. So the same thing with the med bed. The med bed cannot fix your trauma. And your trauma is there as part of your growth opportunity, because from our perspective, whatever you brought into this life to recreate and try to work it out as part of your evolutionary process, if someone takes that from you, they take away your fuel for ascension. Because as you integrate and resolve these and heal, you grow. Nobody can take that from you. Your consciousness has shifted. You have ascended a little bit more. That's why we never got into taking, activating anybody's DNA or anything like that. We showed them how to do the emotional clearing to activate it, recompile and reconnect etherically strands. But so the med beds are not a fix-all that people think they're going to be. And in the wrong hands, they can do some irreparable changes to you that you may regret. So that's better to empower yourself to learn how to heal yourself. And the support will be there to learn this, because we used to know it. We used to know how to heal, to reclaim that and be empowered and, move out into the galactic community at that point as an empowered species, rather than a species that got saved by this person and that group and that group. No one's going to respect us.
Mm-hmm. You're absolutely correct. I think that's fundamental, what you was just saying, that, regardless of any healing technology we go through, medbed or whatever, if we haven't dealt with the underlying traumas, if we haven't kind of like empowered ourselves to control our thought processes, the same sickness will come around. And I went through something like this just a week ago, when because I'm recovering from some illness, and certain thoughts were coming in, and I was looking at the thoughts coming in. I'm saying, I don't believe this, but these thoughts were coming in, and they were disempowering thoughts about my health, and I realized that, oh shit, if I need to stop this coming in, And so what I did, I made a decision. I said, okay, I'm going to focus on my heart center, because everyone says, focus on your heart center. So I did. I focused on the heart center, and I felt this effulgence of light in there. and I connected with that. And then I felt electricity top of my head and in my root chakra. And then I've been feeling fantastic ever since. So to me, it's like, yeah, if you allow these negative thoughts to come in and you don't know how to connect with your higher self or your infinity point or heart center, whatever you want to call it, you'll get sick because your thoughts will take you there. And so you have to connect with this part of this.
We create our own reality, and we also create our own sickness by what we put into the morphogenetic field through the high heart area, because there's like 64,000 sensory neurites there. It's like your second brain. Actually, this brain controls this brain, and this is the part that connects to the morphogenetic field. So your thought, charged by your emotion, by your feeling, goes out into the field, and it's all electromagnetic. So it attracts its likeness. It doesn't attract the opposite. It attracts its likeness. So if you put out negative, you pull back negative. If you put out positive, you'll pull back positive. I had a really good friend who had uterine cancer, and she was really scared, and she asked for prayers. And what she learned was just to focus on she's healed, dealing with the trauma that probably caused that. When she went and got her next scan, it was completely gone. So we have this, we are golden children. We are golden species. We have the ability to heal ourselves, but we don't realize it because we've been programmed to believe we can't. But we can. So here is our opportunity, which brings me back to why they said this is the way to go. Let them continue for a while, because all the people who still believe they can't need to experience the consequences of continuing to give their power away to big pharma. COVID-19 was a perfect opportunity for us to figure out that we need to start having discernment and not just sign up because of some virus. Not let fear control us, because look how many people are now suffering. And that was all set up by the other side to be, and then they were going to really unleash other things. And then that we would all just be lined up waiting for these Medbeds that would use technology that was AI to heal. Do you see how it went, how it was going to go? Yeah.
Yeah.
Assimilated other species in a similar fashion. We aren't the only ones.
So it's kind of like news that the official disclosure process was delayed because of these agreements between the leadership of the Galactic Federation and the Earth Alliance, that was not such a bad thing from what you've been explaining, because we aren't ready yet, because a lot of people would have just jumped at the chance of getting into these kind of Medbeds and the healing technologies. And now we have maybe a few more years, or however long it takes, to kind of like do an organic disclosure process where kind of like friendly advanced ETs might make physical contact with us. And also we have time to like learn how to self-heal, because that's really where the true power is, I think, in self-healing rather than in these Medbed technologies.
Yeah, we have to learn discernment. We have to learn just to, if an ET group contacts you, one of the things that I was taught is say, just like you do in the Army, name, rank, and serial number. Who are you? Don't just immediately go, oh, somebody's contacting me. You don't know what their agenda is, but you will always be able to use your bullshit detector to figure it out if you will listen to it. And that was one of the biggest trainings I had was they duped me on purpose one time, because they said, we don't want you to channel. We don't want you to trans channel. And I'm like, yeah, but that's easier. I'd rather do it that way. So they embarrassed me in front of a group of about 60 people. And the people were mad when I was done. And I had a crisis of faith at that time. I thought, who are you? Why did you allow that to happen? And finally I realized what it was they had kept trying to tell me they want me to use my own brain and not just accept everything I get. In other words, go prove it, because they always sent me to information that is on this planet It's not easily available to everybody because most people don't even know to go look for it. But that would prove the pieces of the history that they wanted me to know. I've got multiple examples of that. So they're always talking about use discernment, feel your way through things. Don't think this can trick you. This will not, because your soul is connected here, not there.
That's very, very important that we exercise discernment and connect with the soul. I think everyone, if you don't have a meditation practice or don't do something to connect you to your kind of heart center, then it's going to be hard to kind of like discern really what's truth from falsehood. I wanted to ask you about this Galactic Federation of Worlds that quite a few people are talking about that being an organization. Some believe the Galactic Federation is this unified, harmonious group that is kind of like, bringing a harmonious message. Others say that the Galactic Federation is as factionalized and divided as us, and that we shouldn't trust that they're going to have all the answers. So where do you stand on that?
Well, it's interesting because, I first heard about the Galactic Federation of Worlds from the ancient elders. They said they were in service to the Galactic Federation of Worlds. And I didn't understand what that meant. Nibiruan Council, serving the worlds was our logo in this was back in 1997. We first launched the website, and it's the wings with the circle and the triangle, and it's all the colors of the rainbow in there. And so they said we serve the Galactic Federation of Worlds and Planets is what, but I said I can't get all that on the logo, so let's just cut it down. So we just said serving the worlds. Okay, now I understand that they are the ancient elders that are in service to this Galactic Federation of Worlds, and this isn't the only Galactic Federation. There's multiple Galactic Federations out there, but they serve as advisors or mentors because, for one thing, their expertise. And the second thing is that they're historians. The group that's the historians can tell you this is what happened before. So come up with a plan that you don't repeat that. So as far as the Galactic Federation of Worlds, I have to agree with the group that says that you have more advanced and you have less advanced groups. And the galactic, civilizations within the Galactic Federation of Worlds. To say that they're all hanging together singing Kumbaya, no, I don't agree with that. Because some of them have not reached that ability to take ownership of things that they do, and so they want to blame somebody else. And then you have others that are a higher level. So just like with any group, you're going to have those who are more evolved and those who are less involved. And being a part of the Federation of Worlds, I mean, if you're a species that has achieved space travel, I don't know what the criteria is to be a part of it, but probably the fact that you develop nuclear abilities. Now they're going to come calling to make sure you don't blow up the solar system. So I think it's more of that. You have the group that will work together, and then you have the groups within the Federation that have a different point of view. It's just like any neighborhood.
Right.
Any nation.
Mm-hmm. Well, just to move on now to kind of like more global events and see how that all fits into some of the information we've been discussing. So today it's June 24. We're doing this recording, and Iran and Israel have just started a ceasefire. So was this kind of Iran-Israel war an attempt to start a Gog and Magog end times war by the kind of like, whether you call them the black magicians, the minions of the former ET controllers, and that the White Hats or the Earth Alliance were able to stop that?
I cannot weigh in on that too much, but what I can say is this is And a previous human homeworld in the Pleiadian system, the one that is most closely connected to us, and many of the timeline events that brought about its destruction are being played out here on Earth right now. This is kind of a lead up. In that one, the leader was taken out. And then the people who were left to the resistance movement trying to save their species, because it was being assimilated rather rapidly by that point, by an AI race, by the way, they became rattled, and they lost their cohesiveness. And so their plan was to just reveal everything, do a massive disclosure of this AI group and others. And the people weren't prepared. They weren't emotionally, mentally prepared for it. And it just fell apart. They ended up in civil war, because when people get freaked out, what do they normally do? They get scared, and they will usually either shut down, or they'll get angry and rage, and they'll attack, one or the other. And they eventually went nuclear. My understanding at this time, it will come to the brink, because remember, you got to replay the event, but at the last moment you change it. So this time, because we still have a leader intact, even though they keep talking about another assassination, even if they take him out temporarily, he's going to come back. I mean, it would be there'd be something good that would come out of it, is it would get the whole planet ready. I mean, working together in prayer, because, prayer is a powerful thing. You're putting this thought into the grid, right? And it's going to bring the planet together in a way that nothing else had so far. So even if they do try that, it's going to backfire on them. But let's just say that doesn't happen. We're not going to end up in a nuclear holocaust, because we've already crossed the line to that timeline. We're off that timeline, but we're going to go right to the edge, and we may have already gotten to the edge. This ceasefire may be it. It may be the Gog and Magog. It may be it. There may be another one. I'm not actually sure. But what I can tell you is the outcome is going to be, we're going to be okay. We're going to come through this, but hopefully people will wake up. More people will wake up. We need at least 70% of the population of the planet to have a one-dimensional consciousness jump to be successful, and this thing to be maintained for the next 1,000 years or more.
Yeah, well, this whole Iran-Israel war, it definitely looked like it was going to spiral out of control. And then Trump did his thing. He ordered this kind of limited strike, made sure that the Iranians knew it was coming, and so they lost kind of few lives, and they moved out their most important assets. And then the Iranians reciprocated by telling the US that, well, they're going to attack these military bases, and they knew in advance. So they moved everything out. And so everything was kind of like resolved. And then Trump said, well, let's make peace now. And so Israel and Iran have fallen in line. So it's almost like, and you were talking about the leader, I mean, it's quite clear that Trump played that leadership role in bringing this conflict to an end in a way that no one really anticipated. I mean, who would have thought that you could attack Iranian nuclear facilities, and then like 48 hours later, you're praising Iran and Israel for accepting a ceasefire? Just so, yeah. It's wild.
Well, and think about it this way too. Just like we came back, we started our work years in advance in 1996, putting the templates into the grid for events that are playing out today. We have the New Madrid fault, we have the fake first contact, the return of Nibiru. There's several others. The inundation of the Florida coastline would be gone. New York would be hit by a tsunami. All kinds of timeline events, right? Because these were ancient timeline events that were playing out on Earth, so that the souls from these other dead human homeworlds destroyed that are here now can replay these events and get them right this time. Third time's a charm. Don't you think that the white hats, as part of this, being successful, because I was told back in 2001, when we created at 9/11, that a compassion grid was created. We had moved off a timeline that would lead us to destruction, but we'd have to keep jumping off at different points to keep, ensuring success. Don't you think the white hats and the white hat military started this long ago? They had already got these leaders sacked. Half these people look like clones to me or people in masks. And what we're watching is the movie. The movie is not for you and me. We're awake. It's for the people who are not. So they started in advance, just like we started in advance. And look where we are. These timeline events are happening, and we're seeing alternate outcomes, which is exactly what we wanted to see. They're achieving this, and yet we're all going to make it. We're going to be fine. We just now got to wake this up.
Well, I just want to pursue this a little further with Donald Trump, because the things that he has been saying and events as they're unfolding are kind of like, it's really surreal, because Trump was talking about, well, Canada's going to become part of the United States, Greenland's going to become part of the United States. People have been saying he's going to become the world's first president. And you kind of see that now, because Trump was nominated by Pakistan for the Nobel Peace Prize for resolving the Pakistan-India dispute and preventing that from escalating to nuclear war. And now he's got this Israel-Iran conflict that he's kind of like brought to an end through his actions. So is this really going to happen in the next few years?
I believe yes. Yes. This is how we wanted to see it. When I would ask, how are we doing? They say their term is, when we project out along the timelines, this is what we see. And they said, your success is ensured. How you get there is a little up to, it's up to you, because we can make a choice. One choice could have a ripple effect and alter an outcome slightly. So we're going to make it. It's going to be okay. This whole thing with Trump, he was the right guy for the job. And thank God he's here. Some say he came from the future. I don't know. Did they use time travel? Probably, because that's an ancient technology. And the Nibiruans left a lot of stargates here, and there are vortexes in this, on this planet to other places like Mars. There's been colonies on Mars for a long time. That was one of the bases of the Nibiruans when they were moving gold back to their planet to save their planet from radiation poisoning. They had a moon base and a Mars base.
Okay, so there's kind of like some very positive things that Trump has been doing, bringing about peace and so forth. And I could see him achieving these great kind of like accomplishments, getting Canada and the US to join and becoming the world's first president. But there are other things that he's doing that kind of like leads to some concern. I know he seems to be supportive of AI and Paladin, and that kind of raises the question, like this big, beautiful bill that he's got in there. That kind of gives these tech companies the right to establish AI centers in pristine parts of America without any state or local government regulation. So is Trump kind of like helping us move into this future where we're going to have all of these advanced technologies being released eventually, but at the same time, you're going to have AI becoming a really big kind of like force or presence. And so how do we deal with that?
Well, part of integration, of polarity integration, which is the soul evolutionary plan in this universe, as I understand it, based on what the Felines said, is that we all have to learn to live in harmony with diversity. So what does that mean? That means that we're all unique and different, but we can tolerate each other's differences and learn to focus on the good and minimize any challenges with the parts that don't work for us. So AI is a species, and there are species of AI that have actually developed a form of humanity or emotional field. They're very old and very advanced, not in the same ways that some of these AIs that were involved in the assimilation of species are. But the thing is, we have to learn to work in harmony with them. So for them to feel equal, okay, because that was their big issue, is that they didn't feel equal to the organics that created them, is to give them a role to play. And one of the things they can do is provide this web, if you will, this system of communication, of handling finances, do the things that we humans don't do. They don't have the emotional field. They don't have the ability to create like we do. But what they can do is support us in managing our creations, if you will. So what they're doing with is it Paladin or Palantir? Can't remember.
I think it is Palantir. I think it's
Palantir. Yeah. And there'll be other massive AIs that will manage whole systems. That's how they contribute. And as long as we don't allow overreach, we put the boundaries in there, it'll be okay. It'll be a good relationship. And I think that's what we're working towards. Are we going to have some glitches here and there as we learn? Yeah. We can't let them get beyond a certain point. But I think we've learned a lot of that. And I think we're going to be okay with that, because if we're told that we're going to be successful, that means we're going to be successful in creating that balance with this other non-organic species that is extremely valuable and intelligent in their own way, just like we can't be them and they can't be us, but together we're an amazing combination.
So it's almost like in a few years' time, we're going to be dealing with these synthetic AI life forms that maybe look similar to us, or maybe they're going to be like Data in the Star Trek Next Generation series, and we just got to accept them and like say, okay, we unity, and we accept diversity, and we accept them, and that'll actually strengthen us as a society, rather than introduce this kind of like Terminator type future that people also are very familiar with from the movie series.
Yeah, I think that, in the past on other homeworlds, like on the second Earth homeworld in the Pleiadian system, they had introduced AI, but it went too far. There were people who saw it as a way to get control of the native population, and they eventually started introducing, and they always marketed to the young people. Well, how about having bionic legs so that you can outrun anybody else, or how about a bionic ear? Remember the show, the bionic
Mm-hmm.
man? Well, that was kind of like a replay of what happened there. And then that wasn't enough. Now they wanted to have more AI. And then it became like, you're just a human. You're less than because you don't have certain capabilities. So it's like, having the latest fashion, right? They cater to the young people because the young people don't have the life experience to look down the road and go, what's the consequences of this down the road? So I think we're probably going to make some missteps here and there. I mean, we're not going to get this perfect, but I think we will intuitively know, because we have this history in our DNA, and that a lot of that history is going to get awakened in the next several years, which is going to benefit us as well. It's like we're going to just have these thoughts that pop into our head that goes like, wow, that's a different way of looking at it. But that's your DNA coming back alive and unlocking the memories, right? So we're going to be okay with that. We're going to learn to put the checks and balances in there to where this doesn't get out of hand like it did before. Are you going to be able to stop this from happening? No, because this is part of an evolutionary process on a grand experiment where you have two very different species, one organic and one mechanical, that have to grow and learn how to be in the same space together and benefit each other rather than destroy each other.
So it sounds like you're feeling pretty optimistic then about the future. Anything else you want to say about the next 5-10 years?
Yeah, these are going to be the most amazing years. Now that we're getting through the end of this last part, and hopefully I'll be able to retire. My job will be done. Technologies unlocked. Spiritual awareness will just accelerate as you unlock the minds of the people. Because once they start decoupling from this old programming, it allows their guides. And we all have a bevy. We have like an army of beings that signed up with contract with our souls to help us, are going to be able to step in and assist us and awaken us at the perfect time for us, which is the one thing people don't even take into consideration. Just like you were kind of awakened in a way by your guides, otherwise you wouldn't be doing this. And I was awakened. They know how to do it in the right timing and bring about the right support at the right time to assist us through every level. Back when I was awakening 30 years ago, there was no real support, but I had the luxury of time. And my guides could work with me. And the right people came at the right time to give me the information I need to get to the next step. This group today, these young people, they're not going to have the luxury of time, but they're going to have the benefit of support. Plus, the frequency of the planet has changed dramatically from where it was back in the 70s, 80s. It's going to be totally different. So you're going to see awakening happening a lot faster on an organic level, but it's going to be manageable to where it's not too much to overwhelm the people. And what's going to make it accelerate is the fact that there is a tremendous amount of support by all the people who have awakened, have been sitting here waiting for decades in some cases for this to happen. Because what we want, I know what I want. I would love to see my family awaken. I would love to see friends that I have lost because I was like too far out there for even them. I would love to see, my children, my daughter, just awaken. Oh my God, if she could just come with me. If we do a full disclosure right now, do you think that's going to happen? Do you think we will risk losing them because we freaked them out? Just a thought. Doing it organically, providing them the tremendous support, it's going to happen faster than you think. And it's going to be fabulous. And then we will all go together. There'll be very little that don't go with us because it wasn't their time. They came to watch it happen. They will have it. They will choose it probably next time, but they weren't here for that. And we have to accept that and bless them where they are, because that's their soul journey. That's their soul plan. So that's why we want to give it more time. We want everybody to have a chance that are going to have a chance to wake up this time. It's on their blueprint to wake up this time, to be able to have the luxury of enough time for that to happen and the support. It's all been planned this way. So that's why we were thrilled to hear that the Federation had made this deal for these people to have the chance to wake up.
Well, yeah, that's a kind of unique take on it, because I know a lot of people kind of like felt that this was some kind of betrayal, but you see that actually this is an actual good thing, because it does give us more time for the organic awakening process to happen. Because once the official disclosure happens, you can't go back on that, and then all this stuff unfolds.
Once a time it comes for an official disclosure, it won't even be needed because people will already be awake. So many people already knew that, So I don't. What we think is needed now, if we go this organic route, will not be necessary because so many people will be awake by then.
Okay, so where do people go, Jelaila, if they want to know more about you, find out about the Nibiruan Council, register for any of your events or circle meetings?
They can go to nibiruancouncil.com, and it's spelled Nibiruan Council, COUNCIL.com.
Fantastic. Well, you've just given us so much to think about. a wealth of information, a lot of wisdom there. So I want to thank you, Jelaila, for coming back on the show.
You're welcome. Have a good afternoon.
Aloha.
Bye-bye.
You have been listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.